Hello, Ma'am Aubrey here. This is the supplementary video I am uploading for the cancellation nung Friday. I wasn't feeling well last Friday, so I unfortunately hindi ko talaga kaya mag-class noon. But it's already Sunday, nakapagpahinga na ako ng 2 days, so I thought it's time that I record your supplementary video. So, gagamitin kong slides dito ay yung slides na dapat ginamit natin nung Friday, kaya nakalagay synchronous session. Okay, so first things first on the agenda is the digital rock collection. So, I promised na once na natapos na natin yung digital rock collection at nakapag-submit na lahat ng classes, that we'll go ahead and visit it again. And ito na siya in its grandeur. Nakapagpasa na lahat ng sections na handle ko. And we have a large, meron namang representative yung 3 types of rocks. So, for example, here you have your smooth rocks, beach rocks, which are sedimentary in nature. And then meron din tayong candidates of igneous rock. So this one is dark in color, and ito din. So this is maybe mafic or ultramafic igneous rock. And ito naman, you have your intermediate rocks. And meron din tayong metamorphic rocks, courtesy of your batchmates. So if you haven't visited it yet, please do visit it kasi it's quite interesting. Your batchmates also wrote their own descriptions that are quite interesting. So, bisitahin nyo kasi we did good in this activity. Okay, next, let's go back to my PowerPoint. Ito. So, I also finished checking yung reflection paper on minerals. And most of the one standout for me is yung misspelling between desert at desert. So, tandaan nyo, if it's desierto, yung landscape, isang S lang yon. Versus the food na matamis and we eat, so double S yon. So, pag food, double S. Landscape, single S. Food, double S. Hindi naman ako nag-minus for those na mali yung spelling. There were several students na mali yung spelling, pero that's fine. It's part of the learning process. So, tandaan nyo lang, for future reference, if you are referring to the location, use a single S. Okay, so about our discussion on energy sources, isa-summarize na lang natin siya dito. So when it comes to the production of electrical energy, meron tayong step-by-step process on how human beings or the human society ultimately produces energy. So most of the time, yung energy sources natin ay nagsa-start with ito, yung H, which is your heat energy. And it will be converted to K, which is kinetic energy, then transformed into mechanical energy before we finally have electrical energy. So for H, there are renewable and non-renewable resources that starts with heat. So ultimately, galing sa init from different locations yung magiging eventually electricity. So, for example, fossil fuels must be combusted and then yun yung gagamitin natin para magpainit ng water, converting it to steam to move our turbines or our generators and finally produce electricity. Same goes with nuclear energy. Meron tayong fusion and fission, and that produces a lot of heat energy. And then we'll use it the same way. Steam, turbines, electricity. We also have heat of the sun. So, galing naman from space, heat of the sun is received from the earth, by the earth in large amounts. So, pwede natin siyang i-harness for our electrical needs. Then, we also have geothermal. So, instead of fossils or nuclear or solar, gagamitin naman natin yung internal heat of the earth. So, as long as meron tayong earth, there will be continuous supply of geothermal energy. Then finally, meron tayong biofuels or biomass. So using recent organism parts, plants or animal manure, ganon, in order to power our electricity production. So, for example, ng isang biofuel production is, for example, yung corn. Di ba, pag kumain naman tayo ng corn, yung mismong corn lang kailangan natin, hindi naman natin kinakain yung stems and yung leaves. So, anong gagawin mo doon? You could just process this, kukunin mo yung leaves and stem, ipaprocess mo, and turn it into a plant-based alcohol. And instead of using crude oil, yun yung gagamitin mo in order to power your transportation or your electrical generators. So, most of our energy resources ay nagsisimula sa heat. Then, there are also those that skip that. Dalawa lang. Yung hindi nag-start with heat. Meron kang wind and hydroelectric. Since yung dalawang yon ay already moving elements. So, hindi mo na kailangan ng heat. Kasi yung heat is nandyan para ma-convert siya into kinetic. Pero since kinetic na si wind and si water, kinetic means moving energy. So, since they are already moving, then, yun na yun. Doon na sila nagsa-start. Then, ganun din yung process. It will be converted to mechanical using turbines and then finally electrical. So, that's all of our energy resources summarized. But of course, meron siyang advantages and disadvantages when it comes to using this. And inisa-isa natin yung advantages and disadvantages in our lectures. Pero we can summarize it into two comparisons between non-renewable and renewable. So, I will be giving the answers na binigay nung Thursday class ko. So, okay pa ako nung Thursday nakapag-class ako. So, there. Nung non-renewable resources, your batchmates have mentioned na masama siya sa environment since it produces carbon emissions. Pero advantages muna tayo. So, advantages, mura siya, it's accessible, and our society is already used to using non-renewable resources, particularly fossil fuels. Our infrastructures are already designed that it's easy for us to process fossil fuels and other non-renewable resources. Several countries as well are already dependent on nuclear, so madali na mag-process sa kanila to gain electricity. Kaya mura siya kasi nandiyan ang infrastructures ready to distribute it into the consumers' homes. Ang disadvantage ng non-renewable is yun nga, it's bad for the environment and also mauubos na siya. So if you have already opened our slides, you will see that meron ng deadline ng scientists natin kung gaano na lang katagal yung non-renewable resources. So they give an ultimatum of 2080. So 60 years from now, at least yung coal. For oil and natural gas, it's lesser than that. If we don't find another resources or another reserve of fossil fuels, then mauubos na siya within our century. So later on, human beings won't have any choice but to move towards renewable resources. So, yun yung isang advantage since renewable, hindi siya mauubos like your non-renewable resources. So, the advantage of renewable resources is that it's good for the environment and hindi siya mauubos. The disadvantage, however, is that the technology is not enough. Even if we always romanticize renewable na maganda siya for the environment and yun nga, unlimited yung capacity niya. Pero it's not enough to support whole cities. Malaki kasi yung demand ng electricity na pag pinalitan natin agad ng non-renewable, yung non-renewable, hindi kakayanin. Especially that renewable are only good for certain locations. So for example, solar, Philippines can go solar, pero other countries na hindi naman ganun kahaba and ka-intense yung light receiving nila or the light intensity they receive every day, then hindi sila pwede mag-solar. There are also certain locations na pwede lang yung wind and hydroelectric. So, kahit gustuhin natin as a human society na mag-renewable agad, it's gonna be a long process. And the technology must also catch up with us. Yan. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of energy resources. Now, I had asked the previous classes kung anong opinion nila about nuclear energy, and it would have been interesting to hear from you guys. So, should the Philippines adopt nuclear energy? I had 5 classes nung Thursday, and tatlo sabi no. Dalawa said yes. So, when it comes to nuclear energy, iba-iba talaga yung opinion ng mga tao. Of course, there are reservations when it comes to it's dangerous and since may kasama siyang risk. When we're talking about nuclear energy, since madami siyang pinuproduce na energy, there's always gonna be a risk, especially if hindi siya ma-manage ng maayos. So there are going to be strict protocols and management pag mag-a-adapt si Philippines ng nuclear energy. The advantage though is marami siyang napuputos sa energy. So, ibig sabihin, if we were able to build a nuclear energy and have like a safe nuclear energy na hindi may endanger yung biodiversity natin and environment, it would help Philippines a lot. But then again, yun nga, it's a non-renewable resource and in order to build a modern nuclear power plant, it's gonna be maybe a trillion peso project. So, yun yung reservations, especially ngayon na COVID tayo. Wala tayong pera in order to adopt the nuclear energy. And yun nga, other reservations as well is if our country is responsible enough to adopt this kind of technology. Yan. Okay, so if you want to give your piece or you want to give your opinion about it, you could also message me so that we could talk about it. Pag meron kayong questions about nuclear energy, it's a very interesting topic. So you could also message me about it. Okay, so meron tayong advantages and disadvantages about renewable and non-renewable energy sources. And as a society, we have to decide kung ano na yung magiging transition. Kasi our carbon dioxide levels are really bad. So what you see right now is a screenshot from NASA. So this is climate.nasa.gov. They have a wonderful website kung saan ina-update nila lagi yung carbon dioxide levels nila. The one you see on the screen is August 2020 reading. So we have 414 parts per million. And as you can see, that's the highest ever in recorded history. So ever since nabuhay yung human beings, this is the highest in history. And since we cannot transition completely into eradicating or removing fossil fuels, then alam natin na tataas pa siya in the future unless we do something about it. Okay, so ito, nasagot na natin to in the process. Why is the world still not moving aggressively towards renewable energy resources? Kasi nga, may advantages and disadvantages. So looking at the disadvantages alone, would give you the answer kung bakit hindi pa tayo nagre-renewable energy. Kunyari for us, the Philippines, we have a small amount. Majority of the world is still using fossil fuels kahit yung mga developed or first world countries. Since mas mura talaga yung non-renewable energy in comparison to renewable, mahal magpagawa ng solar panels and you need a lot of capital. And if you're a developing country and wala kang capital, then you don't have access to renewable energy resources. Kahit gustuhin natin as a developing country, it might be difficult to find funds in order to support that. Especially kung onti lang naman yung masusuportahan ng ganong klase ng electricity, ng renewable energy resources. So, since we are still facing a lot of disadvantages and limitations in terms of moving towards renewable energy resources, climate change is still continuous. Hindi pa natin siya napipigilan. The sad part is, scientists have already predicted global warming due to excessive carbon emissions in the 1980s. So, alam na natin na mangyayari to in the 1980s. Pero nobody listens to scientists. Nobody listens to scientists at all. It's a capitalist world, so yeah. Anyway, so yeah, 40 years from like 60 40 years into the future, 2020 na, we are already feeling the effects of climate change. And I know you don't need me to recap kung anong nangyayari in our world right now. So, since we have a big problem in front of us, what is the world doing now? So, there was an effort. There was an effort among the countries kung anong pwedeng gawin. And one of this is the Paris Agreement of 2015. And this is an ambitious effort by different countries across the globe. So, it is an ambitious landmark agreement of 197 countries to combat climate change. The goal, is limit the increase in Earth's temperature to less than 2 degrees. So, ibig sabihin, in 2015, nagkaroon tayo ng meeting with 197 countries. And all the countries agreed that as individual nations, they will give effort in order to fight climate change. So, ang ganda, isipin, no? Like, lahat ng bansa nag-meet sa isang lugar and said, okay, we have to control climate change. So, ang ganda lang isipin. So, the goal is to limit the increase in Earth's temperature to less than 2 degrees. Alam natin na tumataas na yung temperature ng ating mundo, but we are trying to limit that. So, minimize the damage. So, damage control, kumbaga. So, sabi nila, i-limit natin by 2 degrees yung continuous na pagtaas in the next decades. And the 2 degrees, kahit onti yun, it's actually quite dangerous. Kasi, if you have heard of coral reef bleaching, ibig sabihin yung mga coral reefs natin ay namamatay na because the temperature is becoming too high. So, once na tumaas yung temperature ng mundo by an additional 2 degrees, marami ng mga species ang hindi kayang mag-adapt in that kind of abrupt change in climate change. So, posibleng mamatay na yung mga coral reefs natin and ultimately that will lead to the death of our oceans. So, 2 degrees. We have to limit that 2 degrees. And how will the 197 countries do that? Mag-invest tayo to sustainable low-carbon future. So, ibig sabihin, we have to aggressively move towards renewable energy. So, for countries na kayang mag-move toward renewable energy, for example, the United States, the European Union, Canada, they have to invest in building renewable energy resources. So, less tayo sa pag-build ng additional fossil fuel plants and more of renewable energy power plants. Ang ganda isipin, di ba? Like, at least, hopefully, the world is going to band together and fight against climate change kasi it's a problem of every person here on Earth. It's a good idea, pero there's reality. Here's where reality comes in. It's 2020 and noong 2017 umatras si United States from the Paris Accord. They are no longer supporting the movement toward renewable energy resources. As a matter of fact, they have increased production of coal and oil ever since. So, dito papasok yung politics when it comes to like choosing between your economy as a nation and also protecting the environment. And recently, nagkaroon ng debate between Trump and Biden. I watch international news. So, Trump is businessman kasi siya. So, he's focusing on the economy. If using fossil fuels is good for the economy now, and then yun yung naging focus niya kasi it's good for the economy. Pero in the long run, it won't be good for the economy anymore. And mas malaki yung magiging losses natin in the future if climate change won't be controlled. Okay, so how about the Philippines? The Republic of the Philippines has signed the Paris Agreement of 2015. So, ibig sabihin, as a country, we have committed na we will be investing in renewable energy resources. And I'm not sure if I could pledge that the Philippines is doing that. Yeah. Medyo yung politics natin ngayon, and I don't want to get into that. But if you want to know more, you could access the website of Department of Energy. They put the roadmap. So, kumbaga, kung ano yung plano ng government natin in terms of energy in the coming up until 2040. Kasi since the population of the world is still increasing, including the Philippines, ibig sabihin yung demand for electricity will also increase. So since yung demand natin, tayo din as a country, we are developing. So, ibig sabihin, mag-i-increase din yung gamit natin ng electricity. So, the Department of Energy must come up with ways on how to increase the production of electricity in our country. So, ayun. Makikita nyo doon sa roadmap natin that we are investing in the future both renewable and non-renewable. So we are building more oil fields, coal mines. In conjunction, meron din tayong renewable energy resources power plants. So I don't see any proof that we are still acknowledging the Paris Agreement at all. So yun, that's where we stand. Pero again, I cannot blame the government completely kasi as I said, even if we want to invest in renewable energy completely, it will be an expensive effort and that's something that our country might not do. Yun, baka hindi natin kaya. So there, that's the limitations of reality. Okay, so all very interesting. Gusto ko lang ibigay sa inyo yung connection ng energy resources sa ating climate change issues and also the political issues. It's very important. Kaya kailangan natin siyang i-discuss. And these are real-world issues. Something that are within our lifetime ay magiging problema natin. We might see that the cost of electricity might spike because of these energy resources and the changes of energy resources. So, if you have questions, clarifications about everything that I have discussed or you just want to chat, just message me through Microsoft Teams or Messenger. Okay, so before I end this video, meron tayong soil and water resources activity that I have uploaded last Wednesday. So, yung next module natin is module 6 and 7. Pinagsama ko na siya kasi maikli lang. So, it's a short module. Mas maikli pa siya. Pag pinagsama, mas maikli pa siya sa energy resources. So, soil and water resources, ito yung ating content. For this activity, it's going to be a group activity and magagawa kayo ng infographic on how to conserve water and soil resources. So, isa lang naman, water or soil resources. So, you can choose a practice, invention, technology, or any conservation method. Define that conservation method and provide the benefits in one infographic. So, nandito na rin yung rubrics and nandito na rin yung groupings. Depende sa section. Mag-iba yung groupings, of course, pag nilagay niyo yung section. So, makikita nyo dito, meron nang naka-assign kung anong topic sa inyo. Kung naka-assign ba sa inyo ay water and soil. So, for example, if your group got a soil resources activity, gagawa ka ng infographic about soil conservation. So, one example is organic farming. So, organic farming is good for our soil resources kasi hindi ka gagamit ng synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. All natural. So, ibig sabihin, walang chemicals na mahalo sa ating soil and yung water din natin ay hindi mako-contaminate ng synthetic fertilizers and such. So, all around, it's good for the environment. Okay, so bawal lang gamitin yung organic farming, obviously, kasi yun na yung example ko. And that's gonna be the same for the other topics. So, pag kinuha na ng group yung topic, bawal nang gamitin. So, paano nyo i-claim yung isang topic? You just message me. So, for example, dito, sa ibang section to. Sa 21. So, pag meron kang, for example, group 8, kinuha niya yung crop rotation, bawal nang kunin ng ibang group. So, pag merong nag-update sa akin na ito yung topic na kukunin nila, ilalagay ko dito sa topics list para malaman nyo na taken na yung topic. Yan. So, pag may additional questions kayo about activity, message nyo lang ako para ma-explain ko. Okay, so I'll catch up with you guys next Friday. I promise I'll do my best na hindi magkasakit and just show up at least. So, thank you very much. Read or study module 6 and 7 para may kausap naman ako during the synchronous session. And again, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!